Thanks for joining us for CBN News Today. I'm Ephraim Graham.
And I'm Charlene Aaron. New concerns worldwide as the first patient outside the outbreak zone in Africa becomes infected with Ebola. Here in the U.S., President Obama won't order a travel ban from West Africa, but is considering more careful screening of airline passengers arriving from the area. Caitlin Burke reports.
This morning, doctors in Spain confirmed the first known case of Ebola spreading outside the outbreak zone. A nurse who helped treat infected missionaries who were flown home has tested positive for the disease. Spanish health officials say she's being treated in isolation, and they're working to keep it from spreading further.
We're getting a list of all of those who could possibly have been in contact with her. We'll be in touch with all of these people to see up to which point there could have been contagion.
Here in the U.S., lawmakers are urging the White House to restrict travel from the West African countries affected by Ebola. But the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention argued that would only hurt the U.S. response to the outbreak and put Americans at greater risk. Meanwhile, health officials here in the U.S. remain on high alert, while 2 Ebola patients continue to receive treatment. In Dallas, Thomas Duncan remains in critical condition. In Nebraska, American journalist Ashoka Mukpo so far is showing only mild symptoms.
He sounds very strong, and I think he shares in the relief of the rest of his family that he's been able to come back for good medical treatment here.
President Obama says that ending the Ebola crisis is a top national security priority, and he says the U.S. is working on new protocols to do additional screenings of airline passengers arriving from West Africa. Caitlin Burke, CBN News.
Public hospitals are also enacting special protocols to recognize Ebola. Some in New York City have even gone so far as to send in actors pretending to have Ebola symptoms to test the staff. Healthcare providers are hanging signs telling patients to immediately inform staff if they've recently traveled to West Africa. And many hospitals, including small ones, are setting up quarantine quarters and stocking up on tools necessary to help contain the virus. One of the nation's largest ambulance companies has created a step-by-step tutorial on how to wrap the interior of a rig while transporting a possible Ebola patient. So far, the only case of Ebola in the U.S. appears to have been contained.
In Liberia, U.S. troops are setting up the first of 20 medical clinics to help roll back the Ebola crisis. The 25-bed clinic near the airport in Monrovia will treat contaminated healthcare workers. More than a third of the more than 3,300 Ebola deaths have occurred in Liberia. Our senior international reporter George Thomas arrived in Monrovia late Monday night and gives a sense of the tense atmosphere in the capital city.
The panic and anxiety are palpable. Across this poverty-stricken West African nation, Liberians are struggling to contain their fear. The few Ebola treatment centers that are open are overwhelmed and understaffed with the sick and dying. Dozens of victims are dying daily. CBN News arrived in the capital city, Monrovia, late Monday night. The moment we stepped off the plane, each passenger had to wash their hands with bleach. A few feet away, nurses stood armed with thermometers to check temperature. First line of defense here against I'm doing well, thank you, ma'am. Against Ebola is right here at the international airport in Monrovia. Each person is checked coming in and also out of the country. Thank you. Liberia has accounted for more than half of the world's deaths from the virus. Despite promises from the government here that the situation is under control, people on the streets aren't buying it. Folks are afraid of one another. There's no touching, no hugging, no pats on the back. Basically, people are keeping at least a full arm's length apart from each other. Operation Blessing has been on the ground helping. This week, the group will set up an additional 6 chlorine generators capable of producing hundreds of gallons of chlorine a day, allowing thousands to wash their hands thoroughly in chlorine water and then with soap to stop the virus. 10 more units are being dispatched. Some 100 chlorinated hand washing stations will also be delivered to affected villages far from the capital city. A 40-foot shipping container full of critical supplies like gloves, masks, and bed linens will make their way to Ebola treatment centers. Meanwhile, the daily urgency to get the word out about prevention continues. Teams of volunteers are holding awareness seminars across the country to make sure folks follow critical hygiene steps to keep from getting the virus. I'll continue to bring you the very latest on Operation Blessings outreach, plus daily behind-the-scenes reports on life in the Ebola zone. Please join me for that and much more on CBNnews.com, Facebook, and Twitter. I'm George Thomas, CBN News, reporting from Monrovia, Liberia.
The U.S. Supreme Court cleared the way Monday for the expansion of gay marriage in America. The justice is allowed to stand appeals court rulings overturning voter-approved constitutional amendments banning same-sex marriage in 5 states. The ruling opens the door for same-sex marriages in Indiana, Oklahoma, Utah, Virginia, and Wisconsin. Gay and lesbian couples celebrated the news, with many marrying within hours of the decision. The move increases the numbers of states allowing same-sex marriage to 24 and could increase to 30 in the coming weeks. Supporters of traditional marriage were disappointed in the ruling, but say they will continue fighting.
There's bad news and good news in this decision. The bad news from our perspective is that these states have been denied the opportunity to defend their marriage laws in the highest court in the land. The good news is that the Supreme Court does not seem to be as eager to issue a sweeping ruling redefining marriage as many observers seem to think they were.
Following that ruling, CBN's Mark Martin spoke with Brad Jacobs of Regent University School of Law about the impact of the court's decision.
Now, by refusing to hear these cases, the court effectively legalized gay marriage in 30 states. Why do you think they allowed that to happen?
There's a lot of different reasons they might have done it, and it's hard to know. What they've done is they've left in place all of the Court of Appeals rulings that have upheld gay marriage. And so far, that's been every federal court of appeals that's considered the issue. The Supreme Court could look at it again later. They could come back in a year or two, but whether they'll actually do that is a very different question.
Okay, well, does this mean the fight over gay marriage in the U.S. is over?
Oh, over is a very strong word. God is sovereign, and a lot of different things have happened. But certainly, there would be 2 different ways to fight the battle. One is if it's just being done through legislation and policy. And, you know, some states have voted to allow gay marriage, and many others have not. Once the federal courts, though, decide that it's not constitutional to restrict marriage to a man and a woman, then there's not much that anybody else can do about it.
Now, I had also read that the Sixth Circuit, based in Cincinnati, is likely to side with states that ban gay marriage. What are your thoughts on that?
I try not to prognosticate what the courts will do. I'm neither a prophet nor the son of a prophet, but they could do it. Right now, you know, we're in the middle of sort of a cultural sea change. Just in the last 10 or 15 years, many Americans are changing the way they think about homosexuality. You know, I teach students at a Christian law school, and I've been quite amazed at how in the last 10 years or so, many young Christians have sort of moved to a position of saying, well, I think that homosexuality is morally wrong, but I don't think the government should treat those couples any differently than anyone else. It's not how most people thought just a few years ago. So the direction this thing is going, I'm not at all optimistic that it's going to reverse its direction.
Well, some say it's better that they did not address the issue rather than issue a blanket ruling in support of gay marriage. What's your opinion on that quickly?
Well, obviously, if the Supreme Court had taken one of these cases and ruled, if they had ruled that there is no constitutional right to gay marriage, then these Court of Appeals decisions would have been overturned. The number of states with gay marriage would have been still quite small. And who knows what will happen with that issue in the future, but the voters or the legislatures would have had to change it. If the case had gone to the Supreme Court and they said there is a fundamental constitutional right to gay marriage, then the battle would be over. I mean, it would become mandated in all states.
Okay. Brad Jacob with the Regent University School of Law. Thanks, Brad, for your time today.
Thank you, Mark. My pleasure.
All right.
A Missouri minister says the state's non-discrimination bill actually discriminates against people of faith. Bishop James Johnston says forcing them to recognize same-sex relationships violates their religious freedoms and essentially makes Christians criminals. The Catholic priest issued a letter to the Springfield News leader opposing the ordinance. In his letter, Johnston said, in the name of preventing discrimination against some, the council would impose it on others.
And still to come, as the world turns its attention to ISIS, Israel's prime minister asks, who's keeping an eye on Iran? A huge explosion rocked a military base believed to be part of Iran's clandestine nuclear weapons program Monday. The Jerusalem Post reports 2 workers died in the blast in the city of Parchin, about 30 miles southeast of Tehran. A website opposed to Iran's Islamic regime reported a major explosion that broke windows up to 9 miles away. The Post says Israel and the International Atomic Energy Agency suspect Iran trying to build a nuclear weapon at that facility.
With the military might of the world focused on militant ISIS army, Iran continues its nuclear program uninterrupted. But one Middle East leader is calling on the West not to forget the greater danger of a nuclear Iran. Chris Mitchell reports from Jerusalem.
For the first time in years, much of the world and many Arab countries appear unified, this time against ISIS terrorists. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, however, continues to sound the alarm over the danger of a nuclear Iran.
ISIS must be defeated. But to defeat ISIS and leave Iran as a threshold nuclear power is to win the battle and lose the war.
Netanyahu and other Israeli officials warn that Iran's nuclear program is what keeps them up at night. One official said that ISIS is a 5-year problem, but Iran is a 50-year problem.
And I am here to tell you that Israel is deeply concerned.
That concern, according to Intelligence Minister Yuval Steinitz, is about negotiations over Iran's nuclear program.
The Iranians have shown no real flexibility on the 2 main issues. The issue of the centrifuge facilities, centrifuges for enrichment of uranium, and the heavy water reactor in Iraq.
Steinitz also said Israel worries negotiators will end up with a bad deal. He maintains no deal is better than a bad deal.
No deal means that you stand by your principle, that you are not giving up, that you are not sacrificing the future of the world, that you are not sacrificing global security, that you are not ready that what happened with North Korea will repeat itself after 1 or 2 or 3 years with Iran.
And Middle East analyst Jonathan Spire comes back to the fight against ISIS and how it could ironically help Iran.
So if it becomes the paramount or the sole goal of Western policy to destroy Sunni Islamism and Sunni jihadis in these areas, the effective result of that will be, by default, so to speak, to strengthen the enemies of those forces, which are not democratic forces, they're pro-Iranian forces. The Shia Islamists align with Iran. So it's crucial to keep that bigger picture in mind, I think, if we are to avoid effectively strengthening, or even absurdly, acting in cooperation with our most dangerous enemies in the region.
Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Up next, the food that packs the biggest punch to boost your immune system. Find out what the food is and other tips for healthy eating when we come back. Well, it is the start of the flu and cold season, and if you're one of those people who's habitually sick, your weak immune system could be the culprit.
Well, there is good news because there's still time to strengthen it. Today in our Protect Your Health series, Gordon Robertson talks about the power of food to make or break your health.
Americans love sugar. On average, we consume an astounding 32 teaspoons a day, more than 4 times the maximum recommended by the American Heart Association. We all know that too much sugar can lead to weight gain and diabetes. Here's something you may not know. Sugar severely weakens the immune system. Scientists found that within 5 hours of consuming 21 teaspoons of sugar, our white blood cells lose 40% of their ability to kill bacteria.
We think sugar, rather than impeding your immune function directly, helps the bacteria, helps the virus, helps, in fact, the cancer cells grow faster. So it does all the things to make the viruses and bacteria prosper, which means it's harder for you to kill them all. It's a numbers game and a speed game.
Sugar is hidden everywhere, in bread, pasta sauce, and even yogurt. And it's disguised with over 40 different names, like high fructose corn syrup.
maltose, dextrose, fructose, etc. Anything that ends in an ose, that's a sugar. Anything that has the word syrup in it, that's largely a sugar. Honey is a sugar. Maltodextran. You got these weird things, organic, pressed, evaporated cane juice. So evaporated cane juice, evaporated juices, beet sugar, corn sweetener, anything that says sweetener on it.
Before you buy a product, scan the list of ingredients for sugar or any of its aliases. Brace yourself. Things that seem healthy, like fruit juice and sports drinks, are loaded with sugar. In addition to sugar, processed foods with trans fats and omega-6 fats also suppress the immune system by causing inflammation. Inflammation means your body is busy repairing itself instead of fighting disease.
Inflammation makes you vulnerable to attack someplace else. So let's say you've got inflammation in your knee. Well, all your white cells are running down there to fight the inflammation. There's nobody left to fight the cold and flu entry.
You should know those immune-busting trans fats also have an alias, hydrogenated oils, which you can spot on the list of ingredients. Cookies, crackers, and other packaged baked goods are loaded with them. These bad oils are also common in snacks, fast food, and frozen dinners.
You get more spread of the virus and bacteria if you have a lot of trans fat. Those are in processed foods. And so the same thing goes with omega-6s.
Sometimes it's not just packaged food that causes problems. The packaging itself often contains chemicals, like PFCs and BPAs, that have been shown to suppress your body's immune function. Many cans and food packages lined with plastic have these chemicals, especially microwave popcorn. And if you microwave your food, switch from plastic containers to glass, paper, or ceramic.
One of the easiest ways to decide you're eating healthy is avoid food in a package that isn't in its original form. So packaged food is really bad for your health, bad for inflammation.
Another obstacle to a healthy immune system is dehydration. The fact is, we don't drink enough water. Fluids flush out damaging toxins, while at the same time carry nutrients to infection sites. To check whether you're drinking enough water, look at your urine. It should be pale yellow. If it's dark yellow, you need to drink more. Speaking of drinking, while water is good, booze is bad for the immune system. Research shows drinking too much alcohol reduces the ability of white blood cells to kill germs. The more alcohol we consume, the more infections we get. Now that you know what to avoid, here are some things you can do to help boost your immune system.
The most important thing that feeds our defense system is in fact food and food choices. So what food you have, what foods you have, is key to whether you have a prolonged illness or short illness and whether you get sick at all.
A study in older adults showed that eating more fruits and vegetables improved their ability to fight illness. Foods especially high in immune-boosting phytochemicals are red bell peppers, berries, kale, onions, beets, garlic, broccoli, and shiitake mushrooms. Watercress is the new superfood. It's loaded with even more vitamins and minerals than spinach. Also make sure to eat fermented foods, such as pickles, sauerkraut, and plain yogurt. They grow the good bacteria that kill bad bacteria in our bodies. As a bonus, fermented foods can even help us lose weight.
In mice, there's studies where twins, the ones with the good bacteria stay thin, the ones with the bad bacteria get fat.
Dr. Roizen says hands down, the fermented food that packs the greatest punch is kimchi.
It's a Korean, if you will, vegetable fermentation. So they take varieties of vegetables, cabbage and broccoli, every vegetable they can have, onions, and then they ferment it with this mixture. Tastes great. It's a breakfast dish, it's a lunch dish, it's a dinner dish in Korea. whatever it is, it gives you great bacteria.
So fight colds and flu with a healthy diet. One free of sugar and processed foods, but rich in whole foods and plenty of water. You'll definitely feel better from the inside out.
And all this week, we'll be showing you more ways you can protect your health and build a strong immune system. You can watch the Protect Your Health series by going to the CBNnews.com website. While you're there, you can also order a free DVD of the series. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Hello? Is this thing on? Hey, kids, do you love games? And do you love discovering things? Well, do ya?
Then you're gonna love this. It's the new free Superbook Kids Bible app. You can play games, watch videos, find answers to your questions, and a whole lot more. The new Superbook Kids Bible app. Free downloads available on iTunes and Google Play now.
Finally, today, we want to introduce you to an Alabama dog who truly earned his biblical name.
This stray mutt survived a car accident, then a case of deadly heartworms, and just last month, the Ozark Animal Shelter gave him a lethal injection to put him to sleep. But when doctors returned the next day, he was alive and well. Puzzled shelter administrators quickly changed his name to Lazarus.
It just seemed real obvious. It came to me really quickly. You know, Lazarus died and then 3 days later was raised from the dead. And I thought, boy, that's too appropriate.
He's injected the right amount of medication that should have had him go to sleep. And unfortunately, or actually fortunately for everybody else, here he was. He's back up and breathing and going right about business like it's nothing.
And good news, Lazarus is no longer at the shelter. He's at home with a family and is only mistaken for dead right now when he's playing dead, as you see there.
Lazarus,
Amazing.
like, I have a lot more living to do.
Lazarus, come forth. Indeed, indeed.
Well, that's it for now on CBN News Today. You can find more of our exclusive coverage of the issues you care most about at CBNnews.com.
Want to hear what you think about the stories you've seen here today? You can do it on Facebook or at CBN News on Twitter. Hope you'll join us again right here next time. Make it a terrific Tuesday, everybody.